good morning, everybody. Welcome to our very first live with our Hey Y'all A morning show. Casey, how are you doing this morning?
Good
By the way,
morning,
I'm
lady.
Alicia. I thought to throw that in there.
Oh yeah, I was about to say they probably want to know that, friend. That's
I
Alicia.
know.
I am Casey. Good morning. Good morning. Hello, Miss Monica.
Hello, I'm Monica, and welcome to our Hey Y'all Hey morning show. We are here in Facebook as well as YouTube, and we're really excited to be here this morning. Now, we're here and we are chatting, and really we wanted to kind of be here on Tuesdays to kind of talk about some of the stuff we've discussed. And we're going to talk about today a few different things. One in particular, episode 1 that came out last Tuesday. Actually, it was on 4th of July. It came out with Lisa from Yogi Hollow Farm. We discussed frugal farming, and that was a really great episode. I mean, Alicia and Casey, what do you guys think about episode 1? How do you think that went? And what were some of your favorite topics that we discussed?
You know, I think it was a really important topic for us to cover, and I'm hoping that some of our members of our Facebook group were able to listen in on that and learn some really great tips and hacks for keeping things frugal on the farm. We shared so many neat tips. I don't think I can pick just one. But it was really great having Lisa on. And we talked about everything from keeping an eye on Facebook Marketplace to keeping an eye on what's going on in your own neighborhood with your neighbors to see what you can offer them and they can offer you so that you can live frugally while you're putting your homestead together. It was really a great episode.
It really was. I think we talked about a lot of great things, and we just want to thank everybody also for making the episode 1 of season 4 probably our most downloaded episode so far. That was really cool to see how much y'all enjoyed that episode. But of course, you know, Lisa is the frugal queen, and having her join us on that episode was so much fun, and I learned a lot of things from that episode. I was sitting here writing notes as we were shooting the podcast. But speaking of frugal farming, y'all, I think this is the best time to start off what we're going to be doing every Tuesday, and that's a subscriber comment call out. Because we have one on composting, which I know because it's helped my homestead a lot, that composting is a way of being frugal and not wasting anything from your garden or eggshells and that kind of stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up that comment and we can talk about.
Woo, look at us.
Look at us.
Look at us highlighting our members of our Facebook group. How fun is this going to be?
So much fun. I'm going to just say, I'm so sorry, Natalie, if I butcher your last name. But the funny thing is we were practicing our names before the show. So Natalie Zalasiewski.
No, I think it's Kalazewski.
Kalazewski.
Yeah, I think that's what you're going to say. Natalie Kalazewski. Yeah. I think that sounds better.
That does sound better. And Natalie, thank you for commenting on our Beginner's Homesteading Guide Facebook group. Your post reached about 393, and it was such a really good question. Now, Monica or Lisa, did y'all want to kind of go with it on advice on composting?
You know, I first started composting when I was here on my homestead. I took a really neat approach at first of using some pallets that I found here on the acreage and just made myself a little corner in my orchard where I would just walk the scraps out and put them out there. But then as I started introducing chickens and turkeys, a lot of my stuff just goes to them now, and I don't compost a lot. Now, I do still have one little area for like banana peels because the chickens like to eat the little strings out of the inside of the peels, but then they leave them and they just shrivel up and they look yucky. So I put those out in the compost. But, you know, just pick a place that's far away from your home so you don't have any insect issues, and you don't have to start big. Just start putting stuff in that compost and go out there with a pitchfork or a rake every once in a while and turn it over and get a little action going there. And soon you'll get some rich soil out of that. That's what I do. Monica?
Yeah, so we kind of do both. I have a lot of animals, so quite a bit of our our food scraps go to the pigs or the chickens and the ducks and the turkeys. They love it, especially this time of year when I'm canning, especially when I'm dealing with cucumbers and tomatoes. They love those food scraps. But I mean, we have a large family. So I have, on average, I mean, we have 9 people living in my house right now, and we always have extra people. I'm always making extra food for my family, and just in general, I have a lot of food scraps as well. So I can I understand Natalie. I understand on the whole, make a decent amount of food scraps. So one of the things that we did was we originally built a compost in our front yard area by our garden bed so that we could throw even just some of our old garden scraps in there, non-diseased, non-bug garden scraps in there, things like that as well. But we noticed that the pallet, when we first did the first one, we started with a pallet size, and we put pallets on either side of it, and that broke down over time. As the compost was composting, our wood from the pallets really started breaking down too. So the pallet didn't work for us long term. Now we actually have a big space outside in our pasture, and we do both. Well, we do hot composting as well. That's the big thing that we do. We have so many scraps that we do put out there that does work for us, especially because we have large animals. We can throw their manure in there, all of our clean outs for our animal bins, our rabbits, our chickens, our ducks, all of it can go into our big compost pile. I think the idea of using worms is amazing. And that's something that I'm trying to get into soon. And I'm really excited about having my kids help me with that. So I think that there's a huge market for kind of both of them. And I like the idea of even having both of them on the homestead. So I'm really excited to hear what she ends up using, if she's decided if they're going to do the hot composting or if they're going to use worms or maybe do both. I know that regular compost can kind of be stinky when you first start it. It can be, but it shouldn't be. And so I think that would be the only maybe con of all of it. And it doesn't look nice. But for the most part, I love it. I love that we have a big compost pile out there and we can grab it whenever we need it.
Oh, agreed. Absolutely agreed. I think we're still pretty new to the composting here at Ormsby Farm as well. But recently, if you all follow us, we have gotten chickens and turkeys, and I got advice from Monica saying, hey, if you're going to raise them inside, make sure you put it on a tarp so you can dump all of that wood chips and chicken poop and everything into your compost pile. So we're wanting to do the worms as well. So I'm definitely interested, Natalie, if you listen to this, and I'll tag you in this video on our Facebook page to let us know what you do. Because I love compost because it's a way to not waste anything. We put any scraps in there. We put eggs. We're just now starting to feed certain little scraps to the chickens and turkeys. At first, they were like, excuse me, what is that you just put in our home? But now they're getting used to that. I wanted to highlight my twinsy Casey over at Boots and Bounty's comment. So it says, shoot, throw your scraps in the dirt and it will grow worms without having extra stuff to keep them in. Yeah. That is a good point. That is a good point.
I love it. When I walk outside, if I see a worm, I pick that little boy up and just toss him right over into my raised garden beds. And I've had people look at me like I'm nuts. It's like, heck no, they're going to do their job. They're on the payroll.
Yes, they are.
Since we were talking about payroll, I do want to point out a very important part of Natalie's post is that she doesn't have chickens yet. She's so close, I think, to getting to that gateway animal. I'm excited for her to think that she's planning on getting chickens. So I'm crossing my fingers that she'll get to have some chickens soon. And I just wanted to point that out. Even though it's about composting, I'm excited for her that she's thinking about getting chickens. And I really like that.
Absolutely. Because that is definitely the gateway animal into homesteading is the chickens.
It is. Unless you start with worms.
True. There you go. That's a new gateway, worms.
Mm-hmm.
So that's actually one great way to be frugal. To frugal farm is composting because you're using your own stuff though. You're using your own food scraps. You're turning it into really excellent soil for yourself to be able to grow more food. And I think that is such a really, really important topic when you're talking about being frugal. Composting, such a great way to be frugal when you're farming.
It is. And we've discussed this before on our podcast. We've all grown up in this disposable society where we just throw everything away. Diapers, cups, our food scraps. We throw all this stuff away, and your food scraps are not trash. Make them work for you. Put that on the payroll. Put your trash on the payroll. Get it out there in a corner of your garden or in a corner of your yard and get it to start working for you and turn that into compost. And it's going to be so much better for your garden than really a lot of the stuff you're going to get from the store. Make your stuff work for you.
Agreed. And I think we've talked about payroll so much. We actually talked about payroll on this episode. And I just want for our listeners to kind of explain, it's kind of an inside joke. It all started with Eric and Monica over at Bland's Promised Land Ranch. And they were like, yeah, if something's not, working on the payroll, they're not on the payroll anymore. And I think that's one way of frugal farming, because as we said on the episode, when you start a homestead, probably about 90% of the time you are going to have to put some money out initially. Monica talked about it on the podcast of purchasing the cows that will then give birth to steer, which will then turn into meat that she sells. And that's a long, I think, Monica, what did you say? It's a five-year process once starting?
I mean, yeah, when you first get started, it's going to take anywhere between 3 and 5 years to really see that turnover. I mean, but even if you just buy a steer and you feed it only grass, you're looking at 18 months from start to finish. And that's if you buy it and it's not weaned yet or whatever. I mean, it's going to be at least, it's a 2-year process if you just purchase it. And then if you end up, obviously, raising your own and starting that process, you're looking at a 3 to 5 year thing.
And that's what I think is so important for people to realize when they get to that stage of their homesteading, that it's not an overnight turnaround. There's going to be time invested in your final outcome. You have to be willing, ready, and able to put the time in to get the fruits of your labor, whether that be, planting that the orchard so you can harvest some fruit, starting your cattle, which, has so many different benefits all the way around. But it takes time. It doesn't just happen overnight. So get your small things started and established and then add as you go.
Completely agree. Because it's not even just, we're talking about animals, but Alicia, you mentioned, even with the garden, we are at Ormsby Farm, we are ground cover folks. I like ground cover. I think it saves me so much time for weeding, but it will pay me back. I'm able to have a bigger garden. I'm able to plant more plants because I am not having to spend 9 billion hours weeding. Now, do you still have to weed with ground cover? Yes. But you're going to put money into your garden, into your animals, into your home, if you're going to can or preserve your food, you have to make sure that you get the proper equipment, whether it's canning jars or a dehydrator or a canner. So you're always going to put money in at the very start, but it's how that equipment, and that equipment I consider the animals as well, pay you back over time. Like we have chickens right now. The chickens cost money up front, but soon with egg sales, they will hopefully break even. I think Alicia, you talked about that on the podcast of making sure that the chickens, their egg sales is even out, or was that Lisa? I can't remember which one it was.
It must have been Lisa, but I wanted to touch back on something that you just said. You were talking about how you've got your ground cover and you still have to weed. We're talking about Natalie's comment right now, or her post in our Facebook group about composting. Make sure you're really careful what you put in your compost when it comes to yard scraps. Don't throw your weeds in there because you're throwing the seeds in there. And then you're going to throw that on your garden, and those seeds are going to come back and give you more weeds. Be careful what you put in there. Also be careful what, where you pick up maybe some other compost from a community compost or something. You don't know what seeds are in there. You don't know what herbicides have been put in there. And so you may inadvertently add something to your garden that you don't want in there. So just, that's where if you're being frugal because you're telling people, yeah, I'll take your yard scraps so I could put it in my compost, that may end up coming back to bite you in the rear in the long run. So just be really, really careful. guys.
I wanted to put up Casey's comment again because I mean we love Casey over at Boots and Bounty, and she was actually on our season 1 of Round the Hay Bale, so definitely go check that out. But she said, "Learn to grow a garden before you grow animals, so everyone can be fed," and that is so true. I think when we talk about gateways into homesteading, I think gatewaying into your garden first is definitely a good way to kind of break the ice and learn that it's a lot of work. Gardening is a lot of work. And you don't want to, start where you have to pay so much food for your animals before having a garden. Because as she said, give them the scraps, give them the little bits of the tomato or the cucumber that, you can't necessarily sell or can give them to the chickens. So great comment, Casey. I really liked that comment. I just wanted to call that one out.
Well, I think that's important too, because, she made that's such a good idea, a good mindset to have. If you learn to grow a garden before you grow animals, everyone can truly be fed. And in the end, there are a lot of people that actually have animals and grow gardens specifically for them. I have a friend that has a special area of her garden just for her rabbits, just for some of her animals. And so I think it's super important. They have a area that is for what they're growing food wise, but beyond that, does that make sense? They're growing more than just, food for themselves. They're growing food for their animals too. And I think that's so smart that they thought of it that way, because they thought more about, I don't want to go out and buy all this feed for my animals. I would rather feed them fresh from my garden area. And I have stuff specifically for them. And fodder is a great point too. She made the comment, fodder, when we first started doing chickens and ducks, I realized that a lot of our grass was dying very quickly that second year here in Texas. And so I had no idea how I was going to give these chickens and ducks fresh grass, fresh greens, because I can feed them lay pellets and chick starter and all that stuff every single day, all day long. But I knew they needed something fresh. And so I started doing fodder for my chickens and ducks, which is what I had at the time. And I'm going to tell you what, they love the fodder. As a matter of fact, my cows even love the fodder, and it's, just growing grass for your animals. And I thought that was so smart. I had seen it on a YouTube video a long time ago, and it was one of the things that I started doing. And I never forget, a farmer came over, he was doing something in the field with Eric, and he was walking past and he's like, "What you doing there, growing grass?" And I was like, "Yep, it's fodder." He's like, "What's the fodder?" And I was like, "No, it's just fodder." And he just laughed at me. Yeah,
Hello, fodder.
It was the cutest thing. But he was like, "Why are you growing grass?" And I'm like, "Because the grass is brown." It's, it's only September and the grass was brown, and they needed green grass. And it was so rewarding to see them enjoy that. And I grow them in big pans, and it was awesome. So yeah, learning to do those things, that's excellent.
Casey, do we have another post that we want to highlight from our membership? I think this was great about the composting, but I know we have so many more that we want to highlight. And I know that our members of our group on Facebook, they're going to be excited to see that we're highlighting some of their stuff. What's next?
Absolutely. I was just literally, you read my mind, because I was like, that is the perfect segue to go into, since we were talking about growing for your animals. One of the biggest thing that people grow for rabbits was a comment that we had on lettuce. So Alicia, did you want to take this, or Monica, did you want to take this question?
Monica, go ahead.
All right. So this comment was this was a post by Alexis Grimm. And I'm going to actually tag her in the Facebook group so that hopefully she can see this and maybe get some more responses, enjoy the fact that we highlighted. I thought it was really awesome. She is a first-time gardener, and looking at her lettuce, she's wondering, is it safe to eat? Now, I've had this happen before in years past, and I'm just easily topping it off and just eating it. But I never thought that it might not be safe. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is great that she has a group of people that she can turn to and ask these questions, because sometimes people don't have a friend like Casey or Alicia, or even Casey over Boots and Bounty, who I've called many times asking questions, very similar, where I'm like, hey, can I grow this in my garden, or can I do this with certain vegetables? So it's really awesome that she was able to come and ask this. And this lettuce is totally fine. One of the commenters said it was a calcium deficiency. Wow, if I can get words out today. A calcium deficiency. And I thought that was pretty awesome because we are sponsored by Kelzyme, and Kelzyme is a way to put calcium back into your soil. And I think it's great. Using Kelzyme actually helps the uptake of nutrients to your plants. And somebody had said about, baking your eggshells and putting eggshells back into the actual soil that way. That's a great way to do it as well. But it's cool because she can come here, she can ask these questions, and a lot of people saw it and a few people answered. And I just thought it was awesome because, yeah, I've done the same thing. I've just topped off the tops of it, thrown it in some salad, and I'm good to go. But it's nice to know that you can use things like Kelzyme that will help your plants grow healthier. And it's just, first of all, Kelzyme is an awesome product, but it's also a really nice company. And the people that we've dealt with in Kelzyme have been absolutely top grade, like just amazing people. So it's nice to be able to know that you're dealing with a great company and a really excellent product that's going to help your lettuce and all of your greens look their very best. So that is some nice looking lettuce, minus the little bits of the top. Honestly, that doesn't even faze me. And that is some beautiful, beautiful lettuce. So I hope, Alexis, I hope you enjoyed your lettuce, and I hope your whole family enjoyed it.
Yeah, again, that's where we come into where we've all been raised up in this society of waste or throwing things away. You don't get lettuce that looks like that from the store. So when you see that growing in your garden, you're like, uh-oh, something's wrong. It doesn't necessarily mean it's something wrong to the point to where you can't enjoy your produce. It's just something you're not used to seeing because everything else is grown that you get at the store. It's grown in an environment that is very, very controlled. So you're going to have things like that are going to pop up in your garden. And it's great that you can come into the group, ask the questions. Like Monica said, just cut the ends off of it there and enjoy that lettuce. And I think it's really funny how that really did just play into the fact that we do have this personal firsthand knowledge of Kelzyme, how well it works for, well, hello, I heard music, where you can use Kelzyme on that. Yes, you can bake your eggshells and put things in there and do things from the home. But it's so nice that you can just reach into that bag of Kelzyme, sprinkle it on top, add it to some water, and you're going to see a difference in your lettuce. So actually, I really want a salad now after looking at her lettuce because mine's not growing that well this year.
Mine either, Alicia, but we always joke about Kelzyme and the crap out of everything. And I think it's very true because Kelzyme is such a wonderful product. That we use it on our fruit trees. We use it on tomato plants, and it causes no tomato and blossom rot. I just love Kelzyme, and I think we always say that we're not saying it just because they're sponsored of our show. It truly is something that we can put our name behind, that we absolutely love and we use all the time. And with that being said, I just wanted to go ahead and take it to a commercial for Kelzyme, and then we will be right back after that commercial.
With gardening season in full bloom, Kelzyme certified organic products are just what your garden needs.
From fertilizing your orchards to feeding your soil, Kelzyme's calcium-based fertilizer gives your plants the essential minerals they need to thrive.
Applying Kelzyme to agricultural soils and waters has been proven to increase plant and crop yields while making vegetables and grains healthier and more nutritious.
In addition, Kelzyme can help restore the nutrient balance in animals when they're fed plants grown using Kelzyme in both soil and water.
To check out all of Kelzyme's organic products, visit kelzyme.com and use our promo code HeyBale for 10% off of your purchase. And it's definitely true. We can't promote it enough. It's so wonderful. I'm sorry, Alicia, go ahead.
It is. I was going to say the same thing. We cannot say enough about Kelzyme. I really do appreciate it. But I do want to say, because Casey over at Boots and Bounty said, today's terms. Let's back up to some of those old-timey terms. I'm going to say hold on to your breeches because we're going to go to the next comment or the next post. And it's about these leather breeches beans that was posted on the group there in Facebook. And it caught a lot of our attention. where one of our members is actually stringing his beans, and we get a little bit of information about how to store these beans and a little bit of background on it. Casey, do you have that ready to pull up to show everybody? There it is. Look at that. That's by Doc Fretwell. And he's stringing these beans, and all of us were like, what in the world is going on? That is so cool. What is he going to do with them? And, we'd never seen that before. And it was just really something, and people started commenting on it. There are ways that you can use them in recipes. There are ideas on how to rehydrate them, what to do. And they're called leather britches. So named because of their brown, shriveled appearance. And it was really neat that Doc was able to share that with us. And, we all learned from each other. I think it's really, really neat. Leather britches, Casey says over at Boots and Bounty. She knows what they are. And guys, what did you think of this post? I thought it was really, really interesting. I know it caught my attention late last night.
Well, I saw this morning and we were talking about it a little bit earlier, and I thought it was really interesting. But this is something that, as I did a little more research into, this is something that was around hundreds of years before, and they were actually a really popular way to store green beans because people maybe if you didn't know how to can green beans, this is a way to preserve them longer term than, just having them sit out there. I love the idea. It's kind of like a, dehydrating, if you will. That's what it looks like, right? You're drying them out. They're basically dehydrating themselves. And I think it's awesome to be able to know that you're able to preserve these beans. And this is something that is the old ways. It is not something that people are doing necessarily now as something new. And I think it's really awesome to see these old methods, and I'm air quoting that nobody can see me, these old methods, because they really are older methods, but these old methods becoming brand new again, and people are really latching onto these things. And I think that's another part of it. Homesteading is not something new. There are people, especially even like Casey over Boots and Bounty. She's like, this is nothing new to me. This is kind of the way I grew up too. This is not, homesteading is just a new term for it. And yes, Melissa K. Norris actually made a video on it. And she did a video on it. She did a bunch of stuff on it. And it is a big, big deal back in the day. And especially in the mountains of, the eastern part of the nation, I guess, in Appalachian mountains, they would store their beans this way with leather britches. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah. And Casey brings up a really interesting point. You would dehydrate them over the wood stove. And I know I was just watching some episodes of Anne of Green Gables, and Marilla, she cuts her apples and she strings up bits of apples over her wood stove to dehydrate them. And so there are a lot of different techniques. And I like what you said, Monica, because you were saying about how, homesteading is not a new thing. I have several people here where I live, when I discuss what we're doing with our Facebook page and our channel and our podcast, and like, it's not homesteading to me. This is life. This is the way I grew up. This is just the way we live. And so everybody's on this homesteading trend. It's really just, I think, a nod to going back to the way things used to be that we've forgotten about, and we're bringing it back. And I think that's so important.
Well, I think too, the fact that it takes time to preserve these beans really does cause you to slow down, as well as when you rehydrate them and you want to cook them, you're not going to be able to throw these beans in a pot and just hurry up and get them done. My kids always joke with me that I cook everything on high on the stove because I want it done very quickly. I have no time, and I'm always like, okay, I got to get this done, and I'm in a rush. But I've been very mindful and very purposeful and slowing down during canning season, because I need to get myself focused on not trying to rush things, because when you rush, you make mistakes, or you can make mistakes. And so it's really kind of cool to see that this is a slower way to dehydrate. It's not just throwing them in a machine and letting them go. But you also have to, in order to cook them and enjoy them properly, you're going to cook them more slowly, and you're going to reconstitute them and rehydrate them more slowly than maybe you would, take time to just throw stuff in a pot and go. So I think
Agreed.
I think when you do that, you appreciate it more as well.
Yes.
Exactly.
But, talking about how some of my neighbors are saying that this isn't homesteading to them, this is life. That's a really great way to bring up what we talk about in episode 2 that just aired yesterday, is Homesteading 101, how to start a homestead. And in that episode, we discuss a lot about how not everyone's journey in homesteading is the same. And I think, unfortunately, one of the things that I know that I see when we are approving membership into our Facebook group, a lot of people say, "Oh, I don't have a homestead. I just, I live in town, or I live in an apartment, or, that's my dream someday, can I still please be in the group?" Homesteading is what you make of it. It doesn't matter if you live in an apartment. It doesn't matter if you just live in a single family home, or if you do live on a little piece of land on the outskirts of town. There are different things you can do to start getting into that mindset of homesteading. It doesn't have to start large. Don't fall into this trap of thinking that you have to have 5 acres or 10 acres. You can start small. You can start with an herb garden. We discussed that in this episode. Start with a little windowsill herb garden if you do live in an apartment, or if you have a balcony. Start with raising some produce in a bucket out on your balcony. So we discuss different things about homesteading, and all 3 of us share how we got into this way of living for ourselves, this mindset of reclaiming some of the old ways. So if you haven't had a chance to listen to that one yet, that just dropped yesterday. We have some great tips on just understanding what it means to us individually. I know, Casey, you shared about how you started your homestead. Why don't you go ahead and tell us what you think about episode 2?
Yeah, I think it's another good reason to touch on. You were talking about neighbors that said, we don't call it homesteading. We just call it living life. And I think homesteading, the word, again, as Monica said, air quotes that y'all can't see, has become very popular over the past couple of years. And we do get so many comments coming into the Facebook group saying, I can't homestead. I only have, a half an acre or a fourth of an acre, or I live in an apartment. And really, if you're living life and providing for your family food-wise, healthier food options, growing that small herb garden, or even bulk buying and preserving your food, that's homesteading. And it was so much fun shooting this episode because we're on year 2 of our homestead journey here at Ormsby Farm, and you never stop learning. And I think sitting down and getting to shoot this episode, you learn more as you go. We have these wonderful guests that come on. And Casey at Boots and Bounty, before you moved, you had, was it an acre that you had of land? I'm trying to look in the chat to see if she's saying that I'm saying it right or not. But there are so many people that are homesteading on smaller acreage of a land, but it's starting that herb garden, it's canning your food, it's preserving your food, it's knitting hats that will keep you warm for the, okay, so she said, I'm gonna put it up, 0.3/4. How would I say that? Lord help me. One of my co-hosts jump in here. 1/3 of an acre. We'll just say a third of an acre.
It's
Yeah.
about 1/3 of an acre.
Okay.
And Monica started very small as well.
Yeah, we had a townhome. I mean, we lived in a row home, townhome, whatever you want to call it. Our backyard was very small, and it was something that, I mean, we grew flowers in it. Yeah, so she had 1/3 of an acre. Yeah, but my dad and my mother-in-law each had about 1/4 of an acre. So they even had less than Casey. And then what we did was we used their land and kind of outsourced our garden and outsourced our chickens and some things we wanted to do because we knew we couldn't do it by ourselves. We knew we didn't have the yard to do it in. Plus we had an HOA, which was basically telling us we couldn't grow or raise the animals or food we really wanted to start doing. So I might have been able to sneak an herb garden in there because they couldn't tell that it was an herb garden necessarily. It looked just like flowers, but you really weren't allowed to grow some of those things that we really wanted to grow. So we started outsourcing it to the family that had a little bit bigger space. And, 1/3 of an acre, 1/4 of an acre. I mean, that's great. That's a great piece of start. Honestly, I mean, at that point, if I had had 1/4 of an acre, I could have done so much. But again, I had a little strip of land that was out the front door and out the back door, just large enough for me to put a sandbox and some, a little storage bin for the outside, lawnmower. That's basically what we had. So, you start with what you got and go from there.
Well, you bring up a good point because we've had Slava and somebody please remind me of the name of her YouTube channel. We've had Slava on our show before on our podcast, and Slava lives in Chicago area, and she's very suburban, and she just has turned her entire side garden, her side yard. Oh, she's over at Kitchen Garden Therapy on YouTube. If you're not subscribed to her, go check her out and give her a little bit of love on her channel. She has taken her entire side yard and turned that into her garden. She grows all kinds of stuff. So she hasn't let that mindset sit in that, oh, I live in a very populated area, I can't be a homesteader. She's thrown that out the window, and she's doing all kinds of great stuff. So if you get a chance, go check her out, because she has been so great on coming into our podcast more than once and sharing some really neat ideas about homesteading. Monica?
Yeah, well, I have to say, I really love when we had Slava on there. I think that the whole episode 2 was really great too. And, we've got a lot of really good episodes coming up this season. There's been people we've already had on our recording. We've already recorded a few episodes, and we had Casey over Boots and Bounty already come on there, and we talked to her in another episode. So that'll be coming up soon. And there are so many different topics that we are looking to discuss this year and this season, and I'm really excited. I'm really excited to get into it. So I think we have another comment, Casey.
We do, and I just want to let all of our viewers know that our season 4, we called it Unscripted. And if any of y'all know the three of us personally, unscripted could be a crazy thing. So you will definitely not want to miss what we have going on. But the next comment that I found on our Facebook group is really kind of like a question. We all talked about our journey on our homesteading journey. And this one kind of asks us if we could do something different, what would we do? So I'm going to go ahead and pull up to the stream this question. And it's from Elijah McFall. And it says, what is something you wish you had done differently when planning your garden space? Something you did that worked out great. I have an opportunity to grow some food on a family member's land. So looking for what to do, what to avoid, fencing, protection from animals. I'm thinking 4 simple rectangular beds. And I'm going to start off by saying rectangular beds are great. I have done hugelkultur beds, which basically is you're building compost underneath a raised bed garden, if that makes sense. I swear by those in spaces that you don't want to till up. But one thing I personally wish I would have done differently when planning my garden the first year is thought about what I was growing. We talked about this on our Homesteading 101 second episode, that when you're planning your garden, don't plant something just because you think it's cool. If you don't eat it or you don't think you're going to eat it, you're basically just wasting space of something that you could grow, that you would eat, that you would dehydrate. So I think one thing I would have done differently is, not planted all of the fancy-wancy, bougie-wougie plants that we ended up not even using or canning, or even saving the seeds. But Alicia, what about you? What is your thoughts on this?
Well, I have experienced something here in my garden. 2 things I wanted to hit on. One is when we first I do all raised gardens in a very small area, and we had put down the landscaping cloth, and it worked really great the first couple of years. But now I've got all of those strings from that cloth coming up through the composted, broken down, oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? The stuff I put on top, all the little wood chips, my wood chips. I had all the wood chips on there. So I think mulch. If I were to do that, the mulch, thank you. All the mulch has broken down, and that landscaping cloth is shredded and coming up. And this year I'm just kind of letting my chickens have the run of the garden because I don't have anything in there. And their little legs, they're getting little strands of string wrapped around their legs. So, I can't stand that. Next time I will do something different. I won't do that landscaping cloth again. I do like the rubber mats better, that real thick landscaping weed barrier instead of the stringy stuff. I would have done that differently. The second thing that I would do differently, especially since I have a raised garden bed, several of them, is I would have allowed myself a little bit more space in between. I know some of my garden beds have, 2.5 feet in between, which is great when there's nothing growing in there. But once I get everything growing up over those cattle panels that I use as arches, I can't even get in there to harvest. The sun can't get in there to, provide nutrients to those plants. And I have a friend of mine who's going to be visiting this next week, and she'll be in our live next week. She's going to be sitting here with me and joining in. She said she has a chain linked area. It's a very nice area. She's got several raised beds in there. And she said, I allowed myself a foot and a half between the bed and the chain link fence, which is great for just walking through. But I can't bend over and harvest anything because my butt gets pressed up against the fence and I can't reach my food. So you have to allow yourself enough room. If you think, a foot and a half is going to be enough for you, double it, because you're going to want to be able to get your wheelbarrow down that row. You're going to want to be able to bend down and harvest your veggies. And she can't do that. She's really having a difficult time. See, Casey over at Boots and Bounty says 30 to 36 inches. Don't make it that 18 inches in just a walkway. Give yourself that 3 foot so that you can sit on the edge of your garden bed if it's a raised bed, so you can bend over and pick out the weeds or pick your harvest or get a wheelbarrow down there. Casey says, I bent over in my garden rows to make sure I could when we built them. Right? So this is something that she's expressing to me. This has really become a frustration for her because she says she can barely bend over. But when she does, she's so pressed up against the fence, and she keeps her phone in her back pocket. Then when she stands back up, the phone actually gets pulled out of her pocket by the fence. And if it lands on the other side of the fence, then she's really in trouble because it's in the alleyway. So she's really having difficulty with that. And I understood that. I empathize with that issue because I'm having it in my own garden. I would have allowed myself a little bit more space. And I do think I have 2 foot, Casey. So I should have gone with the 3. So lesson learned, you learn and you go from there. So, Monica, what about you?
Okay, so I actually have had the opportunity to grow on family members' land. So that part right there really stuck out for me when Elijah asked the question, what's something you've done differently? What's something you would, worked out great? But the idea of it's on someone else's land. So I really thought at first, making sure that he asks them what their expectations are is super important. What are your expectations for me growing on your land, and making sure that if you are going to grow on someone else's land, one of the biggest mistakes you could make is not knowing what their expectations are or where your boundaries are, what type of things that they're allowing you to have, what they really would rather you not have, because they may not want you to put up permanent fencing. They may not want you to do certain things on their land. So really knowing what they have set out for you is important. I knew that I was able to grow my chickens on my dad's piece of property because he was like, yeah, you can throw chickens in the back. And I'm like, okay, cool. Thanks, Dad. You can have some eggs. So I knew that I was going to be able to provide eggs for him as well as my family. And he loved eggs. Him and his dog. He lived by himself with his dog and my sister at the time. And my sister was never home, but him and his dog ate eggs every single morning. So he would go out, he would grab the eggs, and he would make himself scrambled eggs every single morning. Now, that was something I knew. I knew his expectations and I knew what I could do on his land. And then my in-laws were the same way. They had they had a patch on the side, and we grew all kinds of vegetables and fruit over there. And it was awesome because we knew that as long as we, they didn't really have any requirements for us. They just wanted to make sure it stayed on a certain part of the property. And so we didn't put any fencing or protection from animals. So we ended up getting bunny rabbits and things like that. So that's one thing that I would have done differently originally when I first started using other people's land, is I would have made sure I put up the proper fencing to protect my garden. I do have fencing around my garden now, and it's important for me because we do allow our cattle to come into the yard. So knowing what type of fencing will hold the animals or keep the animals you're dealing with out. And so you really need to know exactly, Casey said, permanent structures. Are they going to allow you to put anything in there permanent? Or, can you just throw some T-posts and some, fencing up? Don't build anything permanent, nothing that goes in there permanently. They may not want you to do that. And so knowing their expectations is super huge for using other people's yard. But, having rectangle beds, raised beds, things like that, whatever you feel like is going to work for you and the people that you're dealing with. I think that's super important.
Communication is key.
Exactly. We don't do raised beds. We do definitely rectangle type beds. And we do one huge long rectangle bed. But I think the idea of doing, several rectangle beds, making sure you have all that space like you guys were talking about, I think all that sounds like a great idea. And just knowing the people that you're dealing with, I think is the best part.
Agreed. And I think being grateful also, that's wonderful that you have someone that is allowing you to grow some stuff on their land. And I think that was great advice, Monica, of, finding out their expectations of what they want you to do, since they are allowing you to use their land. I just think that's great. I think that's so wonderful.
I will add on a little bit, going from others' experience. My brother has put in a really nice garden where he lives. And one of the issues that he's dealing with is he has people that walk by his home, reaching over and harvesting his food as they walk by. So, and he's more than willing to share. Like Monica said, they grow food and they share it with everybody. If people would just ask, he'd be more than happy to share the food. But he has people that will just reach over and harvest whatever they want while they're walking by. So keep that in mind when you're planting your gardens as well. If you live in an area where people can have access over the fence or something, plant something that's not easy for them to just reach over and snack on as they're walking down the road. So he's had to have several conversations with people in his neighborhood saying, if you want raspberries, all you have to do is ask. You don't have to lean over and bend my fence over, trying to grab a handful. It's mostly kids. And but I know that he'll actually put them to work. But make sure you keep that in mind. There's so many different elements when you're putting up a garden that you just don't realize until you're at that point. So, Monica, you wanted to add something?
Well, I think it was really important too. Casey made a good comment, and we did have to deal with this when we moved. When you move, the buyers wanted the beds gone. So make sure you put something in that you don't mind moving, because that may come into play at some point. When we moved, we didn't have anything in our house, but my dad moved shortly after, a couple years later. But when we moved, we pulled the chicken coop and the run and everything out of the yard because we did not want to leave that on him. We also took care of that garden space in my in-laws' house because we wanted to make sure that if they got to chance, when now they sold their house basically at the same time, we wanted to make sure that what we had put on their property wasn't a hindrance to them selling their land later. We wanted to make sure it was something that would either continue to be appealing to the people that were going to be purchasing, or they didn't mind, we had to remove it so that it wouldn't be something that people didn't want, so that's important too, just to take note. And I think that's a great comment from Casey over at Boots and Bounty. Yes, definitely make sure that you don't mind moving it and moving the structures if you build structures, to be able to take them down.
Absolutely. Another key point too is if you're going to be putting something, whether it's on your own space or someone else's space, really take into account where your water source is going to be. If your water source is going to be a little bit of a trek from where you're planning on putting that garden, if you're going to be going back and forth or dragging a hose, make sure that it's not going to compromise their flowers along the edge of the house or something else that they have going on. Make sure that you take all of that into consideration. You don't want to be doing a bucket brigade either. You want to have something that's easily accessible to water, but especially if you're doing this on someone else's property, you have to be mindful of what they have in place. And again, like Monica said, communication is key. Make sure you keep those lines of communication open so that everybody's happy. So what are we going to do next, Casey? What do we have coming up next on our show this morning? Hello.
Well, I was going to say, I think it might be a great idea to maybe touch on Kelzyme one more time and I know we've like touched on it several times, but we have touched on it. We've talked about it, but I really think it's important to make sure everybody knows Kelzyme is sponsoring, us this season and us being able to do these things. And we're super thankful, but we're also absolutely 100% in love with that product. So, talking about that really quickly and how much it has benefited our gardens and our spaces that we've got and how it really can benefit you. But I think that, Kelzyme has been a great product. And Casey, do we have a discount code or something? We do, right, Alicia? What is it?
We do. It's
Hay
Bale. Mm-hmm.
Hay Bale.
Bale.
And they get a discount code when they use that discount code. I mean, when you type in Hay Bale at checkout, you'll get a discount on your Kelzyme if you want to purchase. But yeah, it's been absolutely amazing. You could check out, there you go, Hay Bale for 10% off. And the best part is if you check out our videos on YouTube, you're going to see, for instance, my garden has taken off. I've got some great stuff this year. And it's because I really do believe that our fruit trees have done really well because of Kelzyme. Eric, my husband, threw that out there this year, put it on all of our fruit trees, and we have had the most amazing fruit harvest this year. Have you guys been using Kelzyme this year to get great harvest?
I got a really late start on my garden this year, so I'm nobody to turn to at the moment. But when I used it last year, I did a controlled study. I had certain beds that did not have Kelzyme and beds that did. And the difference was phenomenal. Same soil, same watering schedule, same amount of sunlight. And it was night and day difference between those tomatoes. It was amazing. And I believe Kelzyme has a video on that.
Yes, and I have to piggyback on what Alicia said. When we used it last year and this year, I use it and spray Kelzyme, now a Kelzyme and water mixture, religiously weekly. I don't want to say necessarily as a fertilizer, but I do it weekly, and our tomato plants have thrived. I have never seen such beautiful tomato plants, and we don't get the blossom rot. We don't get the wilting. They just get all of the calcium, as we said in our commercial, that they need to thrive. And it's just a wonderful product. And using Hay Bale gets you 10% off. And the packaging is wonderful. The sizes, I mean, I'm still using off of the bags that I got last year. It's such a great deal. I mean, we can't talk about it as much. So I want to send us back to a Hay Bale or to a Kelzyme commercial before we wrap this first show up. So we're going to send it over to Kelzyme one more time.
We think.
With gardening season in full bloom, Kelzyme certified organic products are just what your garden needs.
From fertilizing your orchards to feeding your soil, Kelzyme's calcium-based fertilizer gives your plants the essential minerals they need to thrive.
Applying Kelzyme to agricultural soils and waters has been proven to increase plant and crop yields while making vegetables and grains healthier and more nutritious.
In addition, Kelzyme can help restore the nutrient balance in animals when they're fed plants grown using Kelzyme in both soil and water.
To check out all of Kelzyme's organic products, visit kelzyme.com and use our promo code HAYBALE for 10% off of your purchase.
Thanks so much, Casey. You know, like we said, they're our sponsor. They're great. We're going to wrap up this episode. We want to thank everybody for showing up. You know, make sure you tune in every week because we're going to be highlighting our members of our Facebook group. We're going to be highlighting these comments, these questions, these posts. We're going to do this subscriber comment call out every week, and maybe we'll highlight one of your questions. And it's really a neat way to really, again, enforce and support our community that we're building within that group. So, you know, I want to make sure you come back next Tuesday, 9 a.m. Central. We're going to be having another Hey Y'all Hey Live, and we'd love to have you there. Make sure you keep all of those posts in our Facebook group coming. Make sure you comment. And thank you so much for your YouTube support. Make sure if you're not already subscribed to this channel, please subscribe. Give this little episode a thumbs up. Share it with your friends. If you have friends that are thinking about getting a little bit more into gardening or getting into that gateway of chicken keeping, You know, we have a lot to offer, not only in our Facebook group, Beginning Homesteading Guide, but also with our Hey Y'all Hey morning talk show that we've got going, and then also with all of our YouTube channels. Make sure you subscribe and learn all you can. We've got a lot to share with you. There's our beginners homesteading guide. I can't even speak this morning. So make sure you join that. We've got a lot of neat interaction going on through there. We've got over 66,000 members sharing their pitfalls, their struggles, their, oh gosh, I have so much to say about the group. I can't even think about what I want to say. Their successes. They have questions. We all share as a great community. So make sure that you check that out. And with that, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. We're going to thank you so much for joining us here for our first ever Hey Y'all Hey little talk show here in the morning. We do hope that you'll join us on all of those other platforms. Don't forget to click that QR code right there that you see in the corner. That's going to open you up to a whole bunch of different venues that you can learn about us and our different channels and things that we've got going on to share with you. So until we see you again, we want to thank you so much for joining us. Take care of yourself, take care of each other, and have a great day. Bye-bye, guys.